What's up, guys? And in today's video, we're going to be talking to the main man, Jack Hayes, who's going to be running through a demo, basically talking about LinkedIn, the future of LinkedIn, and AI as well. So, yeah, Jack, I'm sure you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me on, Farie. Very excited to reach a new audience. I know I had you on my podcast almost a year ago now, probably. So that goes to the extent of these relationships, which I can really grow to appreciate. But yeah, my name is Jack Hayes, founder of Profit Jack Enterprises. We are a technology company that focuses on helping anyone from your everyday professional, student, person looking for their next aligned opportunity to B2B business owner looking for their dream client. So, yeah, what I'm going to get into today is just a little bit of what I've been working on for the last 3.5 years. Profit Jack started as a company that made people money. That was our slogan, let me make you money. And it was a little business I started in high school, just kind of selling stuff for people simply out of their garage, collecting a commission, and then we transitioned that into the online space, started selling digital products, and that's where we've landed on LinkedIn as a super powerful tool to help people find more aligned opportunities online.
Okay, cool. And what do you think? Like, I've got a few questions lined up, but I don't know if you want to start with what you have planned or like, what would you?
No, go for it, dude. We'll see
Cool.
segues in.
So I have a few questions. I'm sure you can pick out which category you'd want me to ask first. So I've got one on strategy. I've got another one on targeting, another one on automation, conversion, and scaling. So which one would you like to run first? Strategy, maybe?
Yeah, start strategy. Yeah.
Cool. So cool. So I have this question of which is what's the biggest mistake people make when trying to find high value clients on LinkedIn? And how do you set up a strategy that actually pulls in 10K plus deals? Do you have a specific
Yes.
strategy in place for that?
1000%. Okay, awesome. So this is where I'll actually um, just start sharing my screen here. So let me see. It makes sense to do the presentation. All right, we go screen share, entire screen, boom, cool. Okay, so how do we find high level clients on LinkedIn? I want to show well, actually, we can use this one. So let me just start this. This is a lead list. So what I'm going to show you here in terms of how we identify high value clients on LinkedIn. Okay, so we want to start. What I use is a tool called LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Um, it's not 100% necessary, but it is like adding fuel to the fire. And most of your competition out there, they are going to use this in order to find high value leads. Now, a lot of people, when you go out there and you use Apollo and all these other great sites, they do a great job at sourcing your ICP potentially using keywords and potential filters they have on there. But what they don't do a great job at, and what a lot of people don't tend to do when it comes to LinkedIn, is actually target active leads. So, what we do is we come in here and we recommend everybody build out a lead list using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. If you've never used it, you can hop on a free trial. I also have the opportunity to send anybody who connects with me a 2 month free trial. I'm not paid for that. It's just a simple thing LinkedIn gives me to help you. So, what I'm going to showcase here is if we were to search every CEO on LinkedIn and a super important button that if you use this, your results will go up at least 20%. Okay. Like bare minimum, they will go up 20%. Is so we search every CEO on LinkedIn, we see 5 million results. Now, what I'll tell you, advice I've been given, and just simple knowledge that you can look up is over 55% of users on LinkedIn are inactive. Of course, we're working on changing that. So the question becomes if we're going to find highly engaged leads, they have to actually be active on LinkedIn since that's the platform we're using to find them. So one button I absolutely love is this posted on LinkedIn button. So when we click that, we're going to see that 5 million number drop to around 730K or so, give or take. I may have cheated by looking at that earlier. Um, and Now, these are all people who have posted on LinkedIn in the last 30 days. So these are all your CEOs that are most active. And now, when we send them a connection request, or we like their post, or we view their profile, or we send them a message, there's a much higher chance they're going to engage with us. Now, in terms of finding these 10K plus deals, I want to get really specific with that because while yes, there's 730K results here, and there's plenty of other filters we can use. Um, I would say in terms of finding the ideal, like if we have a higher ticket offer, if we want to sell something higher ticket, it's a great idea to navigate over to account search. So you have lead search, which will show you everybody individually, and then utilizing account search, you can target companies that are only doing, 5 to $100 million a year. And granted, they have to report this to LinkedIn. So I always like to advise your results may be a little bit lower. But at the same time, your ICP is just so much more hyper targeted here. So we know all these companies are doing this amount of revenue. We can also picture that most companies who are going to have a payroll, they're paying a few, potentially 10 plus people, $100,000 a year, which adds into that 5 million. So they probably have to have, a decent amount of employees in order to achieve that revenue anyway. Not totally necessary, but highly recommended. Then we go to our headquarters location. So if you can only work with companies in a certain area, if your technology only works in certain regions, highly recommended. Industry, I don't think is as important as keywords, because if I put financial services in there, for some reason, I'm not always going to get every accounting firm. Whereas if I put accounting, we're going to get far more results here, 4K plus companies. And these will be companies that have some sort of function with accounting. Excuse
So what would you say?
me. Yeah.
Yeah, so what would
Yeah.
you say
Continue.
if I'm doing outreach specifically and I'm trying to basically say, let me use keywords, why do you think this is not as powerful as a tool to use when you're searching for prospects?
It is. So it's just as powerful. So what we're able to do here is now we know the prospects we target are only working at companies that we have reported that they are spending a certain amount on potential advertising, right? Because they're doing this amount of revenue every single year. So all you'll do from there is after you select the companies you want to target, or you can save those to an account list and then go back and get more mass results, is you'll just do the same thing you did there on the lead filter. So then you'll come in here, type in CEO, and then we'll also want to make sure that our active on LinkedIn button. So in this case, of those 25 companies, right, only one of those CEOs at those, and that was only 25 companies, right? So one of those 25 is there. So if we replicate that across, let's call, obviously the results will be much bigger. And these are only companies doing 11 to 50 employees. But you got to figure, if you make I usually recommend an account list of about 500. And then you're going to get, when you go in here and do other decision makers, CEO, president, director, other people, then you'll end up with anywhere from 100 to 250 employees that work at those companies that are doing that amount of revenue. So now our leads are hyper targeted, right? And the strategy that we can get into now is how we actually go about targeting these people. So, do you have any questions before I get into the strategy behind what to, kind of how to contact these people once the lead list is built? Before we go on?
Yeah, so basically, just basically finding these aligned opportunities, like this is your exact process into picking out who is a right fit into your business that you want to work with, and then going just touching over like starting initiating the chat conversation. How do you go with that? I'm sure a lot of people find a lot of value in terms of not trying to sound spammy or just say like, hey, we want to speak to this person and we want to feel as human. How do you go about that process in terms of doing outreach specifically? And I'm sure you're gonna get into that just now. So yeah, I think
Hmm.
that's also
Awesome.
something people. Yeah.
Sweet. So, yeah. So, how we can actually start communicating with these people. So, we know we've hyper targeted them. Where I really want to start, because you mentioned a really key point there when it comes to these aligned opportunities, is we're hyper targeting these people. So, we want to make sure anybody who's using LinkedIn, profile optimization is if it's not the first step, it's the second step. So once we know, we're focused and we play around with the tool, we figure out who we want to talk to, then before we outreach to them, we want to make sure our profile is in good shape. So what I like to recommend, and anybody can use my profile as an example, is nobody really cares about your job position. Okay, like first and foremost, it's okay to put CEO if that's super important to you, or you want to put that, that's fine. Founder is fine. But they're going to see that if they really care in your job experience, and they'll see that it's current. So we're not too worried about that. What I want to focus on is the problem you solve, who you solve it for, and a value statement that you've done it or a proof statement that you've done it. So for businesses, that's very easy. For those seeking aligned opportunities, we will put in there the essentially the opportunity we're looking for, and a proof that we can, that we're a fit for that opportunity, right? So we would put something like entrepreneurial professional looking for startup experience, right? Or AI professional looking for startup experience. That focuses on a skill set and then identifies the opportunity we're looking for. So when we hyper target these leads, and I'll get into the right way to contact them now, they're going to click in and they're going to actually see what you're like, who it is that you are before accepting your connection request. So that comes into our flow. What I'm showing right now is our automated workflow that we've built in-house at ProfitJack Enterprises. This is ProfitJack Pro. But the process that I really want to harp on is, if you're, especially if you're under 100 connections, you can't run automation. So if you're just starting out, this is a great way to go about it. And what I'm going to show you here is a way you can actually just manually do this process and see very similar results. So just to give you an idea, I like to showcase, we've been running these campaigns the exact same way over the last 3+ years, but for time's sake, I'll just show you what we've been doing over the last year since strategies changed, and I want to make sure this is as current as possible. So you'll see our year-to-date results showing doing the exact strategy I'm going to show you. Of course, automation does it, but you can provide this, you can do this process manually. Once that loads up, we are averaging about a 38% connection back rate on over 20,000 connections sent, and about a 30% reply rate on over 2,000 messages sent. So when people come into this, if they're going to work with me and do this, we do this one way and one way only, and that's because I'm not going to touch those numbers, right? So you can replicate this process manually. You optimize your profile, you build out your lead list, you know these people are hyper targeted, and then we're going to send them a connection request. And when we send them a connection request, you're going to notice we have the option to write a personalized message. We're not going to write a message. So we're not going to send any sort of message here, especially from a sales side. If we're ultimately, our goal is going to be to get them on a sales call, we don't want to create that resistance early on. From an aligned opportunity perspective and looking for that next job, we are 50-50 on that depending on the person. So if they have all this experience and they're looking for a very specific opportunity, like we had somebody who was looking for the top 100 wealth firms in the United States, then we understand we don't want to spam them or send a bunch of messages. We're just going to tell them straight up who we are and why we reached out. But 90% of the time, we're going to send a connection request, no message. And then after they accept, because we found, and our data showed us, and from talking to clients, they like to see the person's profile and then decide if they want to accept, not read a message and be convinced to accept. So we're going to eliminate that. We're going to view your profile, and then they're going to accept your connection request. And 24 hours later, you're going to want to send them a message. Now, when you're doing this manually, I'm not against, once you see the acceptance, it's probably been a few hours, um, and you have that message ready to go. If you're ready to send that initial first message, then go ahead and do it. If you are running any sort of automation, then you always want to wait at least 1 day, maybe 2 days in some cases, to eliminate that robotic feel, because we don't want resistance to be built in just because the person thinks we cheated or used automation to help us, so that's another thing we found. So now, in terms of, you asked a very good question, I'm glad we got into this, in terms of how we're reaching out to these people. We are targeting upwards of 1,000 people per month. When you're using Sales Navigator, you could save ultimately 10,000 leads. You can target 25 a day, and you can do the math on that. When we're messaging these people, because of that, we want to be very clear on who we are, the problem we solve, who we solve it for, and providing proof that we've done it. If you hit those four things, and in the first message will be more broad, so just kind of acknowledge. I don't like to say great to be connected. I say overlap in work or parallels in expertise. And then we do a detailed message, a little bit, like I said, nothing crazy, but just outlining again who we are, problem we solve, and some proof that we've done it, who we solve it for. And then we split test that with a much shorter, broad message that would be kind of a yes or no question in your market. So if you're running an AI solution for your B2B business or doing any sort of technology, I just like to ask if they're exploring adding AI into their, problem we solve efforts. And then we also hit them with a more detailed message because people don't want to waste time. 55% of users are inactive. Of those that use it, they're not going to spend, 100 hours with you in this sales conversation. One
Cool.
thing I want to make a point on, if you're a B2B founder and you have a sales team, and your sales team is implementing something like this, then there is an opportunity to, instead of doing two messages like I'll show you, which is set up for the CEO's perspective, to do more of that report building and just start to speed through that sales cycle, getting those first couple of messages, qualifying questions out of the way. So that is an option to do. But most of the time, because this is a private software and we're running it from a CEO's account, as the founder, you want to cut that sales cycle in half. So we're just going to get to the point, no stone unturned. And in our second follow up message, we're going to be a lot more testimonial based. So we're just going to kind of mention, hey, appreciate you connecting. Mentioned the solution earlier. Here's a little more details about it with a testimonial fronted message and a short visual attached. So I super push whether you're looking for an aligned opportunity or you're communicating with somebody for a new client, instead of waiting for them to agree to get on a sales call, you give them the demo in the Loom video. You shoot a visual. You could do a lead magnet here that has an opt-in. I'm not against that, but I think there's extra steps there personally. So I create a Loom video, shows them a very similar demo to what we're kind of going through here. And then they have a link there to book a call if they want. And then again, we just split test that with another message. Mine's aligned towards another sales funnel we have, being the podcast, but you can kind of gear it any way you want if you want to split test it there. So again, this is something that can be done manually. So when you send the connection request, wait a day, send the first message. If they don't respond, send a second follow-up message. Make sure you hit on those key points of just being testimonial based and reiterating problem you solve, who you solve it for. And again, the testimonial provides proof that you've done it. And then you'll see here, we also do soft engagement that you can do manually, where you view the profile and you like the post a couple days apart. The reason you want to do this is because it's going to send an email to 99% of people who don't have LinkedIn email notifications turned off. And it's going to say that you engaged with them. So they're going to see your name, even if they're not connected with you. That's going to drive them back to LinkedIn. They're going to view your profile and then they're going to accept your connection request. So a big key to our, what I call 30-30 here in terms of engagement back, or 40-30 in terms of engagement, connections back and reply rate, is in profile optimization. And then just the mere fact that you give them the agency to accept before sending any engagement. And then in terms of messaging, being very problem solution focused, because you're only going to get so much time with these people. So does that make sense in terms of the strategy going about how to target these, going about how to message these hyper targeted leads?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people will also just ask a question that popped up in my mind. Specifically, we're also similarly doing the same thing, but I didn't see it like in your depth, the way that you're approaching it. So for maybe when you're reaching out to other people, and I'm sure a lot of other people know, what are your thoughts specifically on number one, personalization, like personalizing the messages, and number two, basically changing up the messaging and positioning for those messages? In this kind of sequence flow, how many workflows or sequences would you have? Would you just have one dedicated one and then change it up? Or how would you go about that? Or have multiple different ones that you'd split test and test for different people in different industries if you're doing niche specific targeting?
Yeah, so it's a great question. When it comes to LinkedIn, you can only run so much automation, the or so much outreach. I don't want to necessarily use the word automation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have these limits built in that are automatically tracking the amount of engagement that we're sending out and slowing down accounts if they're not seeing a certain engagement level back on what we're sending out. And the reason I mentioned that is because you mentioned how do we, split test campaigns and do customization variation. And the simple answer is just that we don't. So we don't want to run campaigns simultaneously to the same account just because it's going to register too many automation signals to LinkedIn, and then we have to worry about LinkedIn jail. And knock on wood, we've never had anybody go through that. But it's something you can easily fall into when you're doing this manually because some days you feel like sending out 100 engagements and nobody's telling you to stop, when in reality you really should have only sent 25. And then if you don't see 30% engagement back on that, then you're going to start getting flagged. So instead, for message variation, you can split test as many as you want. My opinion on that when you're doing it manually or with automation is to get really into AI. And I know you have a question on that later on, so we'll segue into that, and I'll go into more detail. But one thing that's super valuable about AI is that you have access to these GPTs, and you can even build your own GPT. Or if you go in here and you have ChatGPT Plus, you can type in the Profit Jack GPT. This one's 100% built for LinkedIn. Of course, I don't get paid for this. It's completely free if you're using ChatGPT Pro, or yeah, Plus, for $20 a month or whatever it is. And from here, this is where you can really get detailed with your message customization. So you want to tell the bot everything about you and your business. If you've done the LinkedIn profile optimization, you can use it to write an about section for you based on your experience, and I highly recommend that. You can use it to write blogs, anything associated with LinkedIn copy, you can use that. And you want to use that data so that when it's communicating with you on how to respond to a sales conversation, it knows what you sound like. So the best case is you've been using LinkedIn for sales in the past and you have some conversations. You can go into your LinkedIn settings, download that data file, and then upload it to the GPT, and it'll have all of your conversations, and it'll really get to know your voice. So this one is going to consult you from my voice, but then when you tell it, how to respond to a message, it'll communicate back to you in your voice as long as you've given it that data. So what I like to do for message customization is once a response is generated to any of the engagement I put out, I just simply copy and paste that message, and I can do kind of a live demo here because I have so many unreads anyway. So we'll just go here and let me show you here. Boom. So this guy is not really looking for this type of service right now. But earlier, what we did, and I'll just show because I have the example up, is sometimes on LinkedIn, you'll get approached, right? And you get a message like this. It's, something trying to pitch them. So what I did was I copied and pasted that, and I went into here, and we go to Profit AI, or sorry, let me go to, oh wait, that may have been the one. Let me search up here. Back to this.
And like with that inside, while you searching for it, what how big of a role does AI play specifically, like in integrating into LinkedIn? Because I know for some of the things that we're actively doing in terms of just commenting and outreach methods that we're using it in specific parts, but not as a whole. So in terms of that, what are your thoughts on leveraging AI in terms of LinkedIn, just outreach from a B2B perspective?
Yeah, so I think it's super important. So just from once you train AI to really understand your offer, it can be your best sales rep. There are some products out there. Luke Alexander built one called Kendo that I've heard is really good, and that's like an AI sales trainer. And then this one is my GPT is also trained on like Jeremy Miner data and all these other sales coaches. So it really encompasses that. And what I'll kind of show you here is you can just screenshot the conversation you're having or send a screen recording, and then give it a prompt, respond to this message effectively to draw interest in our offer. Maybe a soft question at the end exploring if you'd be interested in a performance-based solution that you could resell to his partner. So from there, it gives you pretty much what I say is 80 to 90% of this. I would delete the emojis. I didn't delete it in my current one, but it just kind of gives an AI vibe. But it'll give you a good starting point, and then you can copy paste that. And then, we didn't get necessarily the response we wanted, but it's still something we could work for. And I may ask him why he thinks that, right, and go from there. So in terms of AI customization, I'm a big proponent of it. I'll stop sharing my screen here because there's not too much more
So,
on that. Um,
mhm,
but yeah, I would say use it and get to know how to use it and get really good at using it. Because learning it now, I know we have these conversations all the time where it's like we're so ahead. We're so ahead in terms of being the first, right? I think there's a common theme, for anybody born, I would say like 2000 to, 2006, 2005 even. Like you have a unique advantage where we're the first people to get super used to social media. We're the first people to start making money with social media. We're the first people to start making money with the internet, right? And we're the first people to start mass adopting Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And now we're the first people to get introduced to AI and get to learn how to utilize it and help people. And I touched on this the other day, but we're kind of in a generation right now where it's a little deep, but it's interesting, where we have we have people who and for a lot of us it's our parents, right, born between the 1960s and 1980s, that had 20 plus years of a world with none of what we have now and nothing remotely close. And now we're in a position where these things are able to be leveraged, and there's a dynamic between, you know, can there's those people that are willing to accept, like, we have 20, 30 years doing it the old fashioned way, as they call it, and we're open to learning how these new things go. And I understand the bias of not being so apt to wanting to do those things. But then where we come in, and a lot of your audience, a lot of my audience, by knowing these things and being so open minded because we don't know any different, we can provide that to these people. So that's where you go in and you target these business owners that have been in business 10 plus years, that have the money. Money's not an issue. Don't even
mhm.
worry about the money when you're on those calls. Just getting into the mind frame of, hey man, I understand this is all very, very new, but I have a lot of experience being in it because I didn't have a choice. This is this is the blue collar jobs of the 1970s and 80s, right? Learning AI infrastructure ultimately is what's taking place because we're heading more digital than we are, just, one dimensional, to put it plainly.
100%. And in terms of just saying, hey, like, obviously there's so many changes that are going on in terms of the algorithm, and I know the algorithm is a big factor that plays into a lot of things in terms of YouTube, X, Meta, and so many other big platforms. And just basically saying, like, how are you able to stay ahead of the curve and finding and closing high value clients? Is it mainly just you using your software? Like, I know we build a lot of custom backend infrastructure and things like that, and we mainly just do it in terms of saying, hey, we're coming in and we're building this on top of what your existing tech stack is, and ultimately just creating leverage to through that. And I just wanted to ask, like, is that the one of the reasons why you took the approach of saying, hey, let's build our own Profit Jack Pro? Or what mindset shift or perspective brought you to saying, hey, we need our own custom in-house solution for this?
Yeah, it comes down to um it comes down to ownership. It comes down to being able to take the risk in terms of what you're giving people essentially access to do whatever they want with, that they're going to use it the right way. And it took, it really took 3 years of using other technology, and essentially just, like just using other technology, kind of using it on the back end. But what those experiences taught me was, okay, there's a better way to do this. We've transitioned 3 or 4 times between the technology partner that powers these solutions for us. And ultimately, we found one that was able to give our clients individual access and do it our way. Because there was one thing to use every automation tool that exists for LinkedIn, there's another thing to know how to actually use it. So we've just really, the key piece for me was I want people to work with us because they want to work with me as the individual, and we build like a real sustainable relationship with that, whether the technology exists or not. So it's going to be there and it's a key component. But I think where a lot of software founders could find an advantage is being less software people and more people and just focusing on, hey, the technology is going to evolve. We're going to get better. We're going to implement new technology, introducing people to that, and then being open and adapting to that. So to I kind of lost a little bit of track on your question there. Uh, but
Algorithm.
the algorithm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and the algorithms it applies the same, right? So where I come in with LinkedIn, like the algorithm wants authenticity. So by being a people person and sharing that with the rest of the world, then you're going to generate people that want to work with people that can relate with people. And I had this conversation with literally my last sales call. And this client was really unsure of her ICP. She had a decent product, but she wasn't really sure where to go. And I told her in terms of her ICP, focus on who you know how to help best, and who you know how to help best is you. So when you target these algorithms with who you are, and that's unique to the market, and that generates relatability from a variety of different markets, you're going to go more viral than the person who's just trying to copy the sales coach who saw some success. That sales coach, 9 times out of 10, saw success creating content for their offer, not because they copied someone else, but because they copied a similar system and they did their own thing with it. And there's a lot of value in I don't like copying without stealing, if that makes sense. Or maybe the term's better to say stealing without copying. I almost feel like when you steal something, you own it, but when you copy something, you can put your own twist on it, right? So you can copy and paste these templates and these automations, but then you need to put your own unique spin on it, and that's what's going to help you stand out in the market. And simple answer is like no, don't overthink the algorithms. Don't like focus on one platform. Become really good at one platform. Use that to funnel your other platforms naturally. Wait till people start asking you, "Hey, why don't you have a TikTok? Hey, why don't you have an Instagram?" That's market feedback from your YouTube viewers telling you um, to go there. And just to give some direction, if anybody's like, "Well, what platform do I focus on? I really like using Instagram, but TikTok's funnier," and blah 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 blah,
Mhm.
focus on YouTube. Okay. You do a great job of this. I don't even personally I'm like I give this advice and I'll transparently say I don't sit down and shoot enough of these, but I'll definitely like do something with this, right? The podcast tries to help keep me sane on that point. But the reason I'm so big on YouTube is because from a pure algorithmic standpoint, it's the only platform that's accessible to 95% of the world. It's also the second largest search platform next to Google, who owns them. So by you helping YouTube, you're helping Google. Google wants to help you. By you helping Google, by producing a good newsletter on your website, etc., you're helping Google, which then when you start producing YouTube content, they connect that and they produce that out to the rest of the world. If you type Profit Jack on Google, you're going to get my YouTube channel. Or if you type, yeah, like it's one of the first things that comes up. So start anywhere, start on YouTube, and then don't overthink the content. Definitely just take what worked and either replicate it or reproduce it. Do a new edit on that YouTube short. It kills me when people make different content for different platforms. I cannot believe we're still doing that and still having this conversation. That 15-minute YouTube video you just made, divided by 30 seconds, give or take the 80-20 rule, like you've got 20 clips there. That's one post a day or one post every other day for 2 months. That's a post a day for a month or a post every other day for like 2 months. Okay. And then you are consistent and you just create when you want. So don't overthink the algorithms. Just to kind of sum up your question, focus on YouTube. And authenticity is going to be your highest engagement. Yep. So for me, it is it is, I'll give you the pretty much the exact framework. I've never even really said this out loud, but it is LinkedIn newsletter, or I go podcast, then LinkedIn newsletter based on the podcast, right? So we go LinkedIn newsletter typically. That has hyperlinks to the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel's description links back to the LinkedIn newsletter. Um, and then both those funnels have our free playbook at the bottom of them. So each platform has a lead magnet, each platform has a link to the other platform. And then I use Instagram stories and Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, etc., to simply build trust. So Instagram likes lifestyle content, it's less instructional, and then it's just broadcasting the instructional stuff I'm putting on those platforms. So if you want to learn from me, you go to LinkedIn, you go to YouTube, and then usually those are my warmest clients if they've watched those videos. But I do get a decent amount, especially since we're in this like feedback loop with the software, through Instagram stories and just showing them different ways that I'm using it. So different use cases and Instagram stories with links. Make sure you use this app called Link Twin, because when you post to the other platforms, Instagram doesn't love that. They're not going to promote your story. But if you just put a website, they're not going to be able to tell. And then when they click that link, it'll take them straight to the app instead of you having to log in and all that resistance. So Instagram stories, LinkedIn newsletter, YouTube channel, they all connect to each other, and then just using Instagram Reels and like TikTok Reels, probably once or twice a week right now to do lifestyle content, vlogs, etc. Um, I would say in terms of how we generate like our most of our revenue, I tell people this all the time. If you consider yourself a growth agency and you're making a majority of your money on paid ads, I'm not against that, but why are you not implementing that system for your growth agency clients? That would be my first question. So, and that comes down to use your own systems first and be your own best testimonial. Everything I just showed you was, aside from the 20,000 connections, right? Those were all clients we've worked with as well. Um, but my campaign, right? Like in my demo video, it's my account. It's my profile optimization. It's my results over the last couple of years. It's my live responses to booking 5 to 10 calls a week. And that does its work because I'm selling to my ICP, right? Like it dials back into what we just talked about. Because I'm authentic, I'm driving like-minded people through my Instagram stories and my YouTube channel, and I'm just talking to myself, different versions of myself that have different skill sets on these calls. And so it makes sense. They want to see how I used it. They don't really give a shit how Mary down the street used it, especially if you have a niche problem where you don't have testimonials in the niche you're targeting, then your only option is to showcase yourself, because you can't showcase nothing. You can't go that whole sales call with no testimonial and expect the client to close for 3 to 5K. You have to show them something that this thing freaking works. And I see that as a big gap. So I wanted to just pinpoint that. But you can be your own best testimonial. The mental gap we get is I don't have any. No, you booked that call. How did you create that call? Show them how you created that call, and you will close at least 10% more deals. Let me throw a small number out there. There you go. Yeah, you still have stuff forever. Yes, 100%. And another reason, just to touch on that, I like LinkedIn because it's one of the and YouTube because it's a very relationship based platform. TikTok and Instagram Reels are short form, short attention span, not really listening to you. You go onto YouTube to watch a podcast, you're tuned into that podcast, kind of listening to that person, right? Same with LinkedIn. You're reading that LinkedIn newsletter, you're tuned in, building that relationship. So these, when you do your messaging, like that's very important that you do get, like you build kind of focus on relationship building with these people. But yeah, it's great. I appreciate that, man. Hopefully, we'll keep that ball rolling, man. Yeah, it's super super powerful, super untapped. Hopefully, they don't go anti AI. I think that's our only thing that keeps me up at night is like you could flip the switch, but if you learn these strategies, there's always the opportunity to implement them manually. We'll go full, I don't want to say coach mode. We'll go full mentor mode, and we'll do the processes we have to do. But yeah, that's awesome, man. Really really appreciate it. Super cool. Yeah, anytime, dude. No, sir. You guys know where to find me. You can type Jack Hayes on Instagram. If you type Profit Jack on Google, we're the first name that comes up. So if that helps you in any way, and yeah, just DM me if you're curious about anything we talked about today. I always say, we don't charge for our intro calls or anything like that. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for me. That is my favorite saying. So don't feel any pressure. I'm just here to help. But yeah, can't thank you enough for this super cool opportunity. And we got part two of our podcast coming in person, bro. So just keep freaking grinding because I'll be close soon. Next time I'm in Spain, that's no excuses. You're not far enough. Thank you very much, Fareed. Always a pleasure.
Mhm. 100%. And I just want to go over like a bit of funnels. Do you run any current funnels in terms of saying, hey, we have YouTube to Instagram or LinkedIn to YouTube or YouTube to LinkedIn? Do you run any of those funnels that are actually converting in terms of new clients, new people that you're reaching out to? Does that actually build a lot of value for you specifically in saying, hey, we have our YouTube platform, or rather say like where do people see you most that ultimately leads you to more deals? Is it LinkedIn to you, then they see your YouTube, or is it specifically YouTube then they see your LinkedIn and then you just run off of it like that? Creative. 100%. You'll make your first 10K at least. Simply put, because for us, like one of the things that's also helped me a lot is simply just being able to sell, like, hey, I'm sure like in the beginning like it was pretty tough because we didn't have testimonials, we didn't have any case studies, especially niche specific ones, and then just basically just running out and saying, hey, like we're gonna figure it out and we're gonna just go on Figma and we're gonna build them out, and then ultimately that led us to getting more pipeline deals, and into the future like just having those in that just having those that we have built ultimately is just has been one of the things that has been helping a lot of creating a lot of value in terms of the pipeline. So yeah, I see a lot of. True. And the thing is like a lot of people buy into people, and this is the thing that I've seen a lot in terms of what it is that we're building, because they want to trust the person that they're working with rather than saying, "Hey, we know you're going to guarantee this result." But the main thing that I found is that many people just want to work with people. Be, People want to work with people building and making cool stuff, you know? Yeah. Sure, sure. I agree. I agree. And you mentioned very good point, which also just makes me think like just focusing specifically on these platforms. I think having a relationship based approach to it ultimately just creates a lot of value, because you're saying, hey, we're not just hitting for dopamine, like we're building relationships, which ultimately just leads into more pipeline deals, which ultimately just leads to more value creation into the future. And that's something that I think a lot of people can implement, especially if they're just starting out with LinkedIn, and also if you're at an intermediate phase. There's so many people that I've heard say like, "Hey, like we need to implement these certain strategies," but I see yours, and it just makes me think that, hey, we need to super double down on what it is that we're doing in terms of LinkedIn outreach, because it's such a powerful tool, and what you're building is even more powerful. And shout out to you, bro. Like what you're doing in terms of LinkedIn, you're the guy. You're the guy, I have to say. Yeah. Yeah, it was really good to chat to you and to share some knowledge. I hope you'll be back to again to let the people know. Yeah. Yeah, do you have any final words you wanna just say, Lost? Bro. Of course, of course. And make sure to check out his podcast. I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of value from that, and I'm just gonna leave it down in the description so you guys can just go check out all his socials. And I just want to personally thank you, bros, for just joining us on this call and sharing some LinkedIn game, and I really appreciate it, and I'm sure the people watching this also appreciate it as much. And I just want to say thank you once again, bro. Great. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.